Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. What a day today was. Lots of outrage, lots of shock, lots of, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. How can you not believe it? I'm watching social media and I'm going, explain to me how you didn't know this was coming. How did you not know the Supreme Court with the leaked document a month or so ago saying, yeah, they're going to overturn Roe? How are you shocked? How are you surprised? Look, this has been in the making for the last, 50 years. They've been telling you they want to overturn this. This has been the conservative wet dream for a very long time. This has been the dog chasing the car. The dog has now caught the car, has chewed the bumper off the car, and now people are surprised. And here's the thing. This is the important thing. The American people, we the people, supportive of safe, legal abortion. This is the weird moment of our democracy broken. If you look at the latest Reuters Ipsos poll, 71%, including 60% of Republicans, said that they believe that that decision, that whole thing between a woman and her doctor. Oh my gosh. Imagine that. A decision that should not have government involved in it between a woman and her doctor. Just 15% believe it should be regulated by the government. And yet, here we are. Now, there's a part of this poll that's a little interesting. Maybe going to matter, maybe not. According to it, 61%, including 38% of Republicans, 39% of independents, say that they were going to be less likely to vote for a candidate who supported the ban or supported restrictions. We'll see. I don't know that I buy that. I don't know that this is going to be as big a deal as a lot of my friends on the left believe it's going to be. Because I don't think we're going to see the pain yet. I don't think you're going to see the suffering. I don't think you're going to see the heartache. I don't think you're going to see the destruction. I don't think you're going to see it just quite yet. Down the road, most certainly. But there's going to be some outrage. Now, the three members of the Supreme Court that dissented, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Breyer, they ended with sorrow for this court, but more for the millions of American women who have today lost the fundamental constitutional protection. We dissent. The president came out and said today the Supreme Court expressly took away a constitutional right for the American people. They didn't limit it. They simply took it away. It's a realization of extreme ideology and a tragic error, the president said of the Supreme Court in his view. Not an error. They said they were going to do it. You knew they were going to do it. Now, everyone's losing their mind. Susan Collins had her, but they lied. This decision's inconsistent with what the Justice Gorsuch and Kavanaugh told me. They told me they wouldn't. They promised. Also, you had Joe Manchin, who kind of said the same thing. They testified under oath that they believed it was settled law. Yeah. Again, are we to believe you're stupid? No. Are we to believe you're naive? No. But we know you're not either one of those. Disingenuous? Yes. Not telling us the truth? Absolutely. But here we are. You both voted for them, and this is what we get. And now look, if I get one more email from a Democrat or a pro-abortion group going, hey, send us money because now we're going to fight, I'm going to lose my mind. Because where have you been all of this time till now? Now is not the time to go, hey, send us more money so we can give it to politicians to not do anything. Now is the time to take that energy Now is the time to take the outrage. If you were shocked and dismayed, and if you were disheartened, if you were for any of those things, now is the time to put on, maybe knock on Obama's door and ask Barack Obama to borrow his comfortable shoes that he never used to walk the picket lines, and get your comfortable shoes and start getting into the streets. This is where we need to go back into in between the curbs and have conversations and find common ground, and use the politicians as the tools that they are to push what we all want. When 71% of us say that decision should be between a woman and her doctor, not be a bunch of old white guys out of court and an old handmaiden, there's something here. There's something here, folks. Now, remember, here's the argument. Let me lay this out real simple. The conservatives will tell you, we're not banning abortion. No. We're not. We're just returning it to the states where we believe it's not. We're not against. No. We're against federalism. We want to return things to the states because we believe in states' rights. We're 10th Amendment people. Yeah. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He said in less than 140 days, things are going to change around Washington because he believes, because of the November election, they're going to take control of the House. And what are they going to do? What's the grand plan? What's Kevin McCarthy think they're going to do? Well, a nationwide ban on abortion at 15 weeks. Anyone want to raise their hand and answer the question? But I thought this was returning it to the states and not making this a federal thing. What happened to that? Oh, because it was never about that. Your ideology is total BS, and you don't even believe it. This is about power. This is about control. That's what this is about. So I'm curious your thoughts today. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You buy in the, oh no, we're just going to give it back to the states. It's a states' rights issue. Controlling women's bodies, controlling their future, controlling whether they have families or not. Control is a states' rights issue. It's not the federal government. Now, Mike Pence, who wants to be president, by the way, Mike Pence, he's calling for a national abortion ban as well. Again, never mind. Josh Hawley thinks this ruling is going to be fabulous for the GOP. It's going to be great. He said that he predicts that the effect is going to be more and more red states are going to become more red. Purple states are going to become red, and blue states are going to become a lot bluer. So he's saying, look, we're dividing up into camps. Red states are going to become ultra red. Blue states are going to become ultra blue. And hey, the Civil War. Yay! Big fun on the horizon. Now, Trump, here's the weird thing. I actually in this one little moment, I actually kind of agree with Trump. He's like, what's being reported is he said he would rather, put some caps, some limits, don't want to ban it because it's bad politics for them. I kind of agree with him. I think it's going to be bad for Republicans. Where I think he went off the rails, again, trying to kowtow to the evangelicals. He was on the F channel, and he basically said it was God's decision. God did this. It wasn't the five people in robes. It was God who did it. So, yeah, big fun there. Now, Clarence Thomas, who wrote the opinion, didn't just stop at Roe. And again, we've been saying this is nothing new. Anybody who's listened to the program knows they want to repeal the 20th century, want to take us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s. But Clarence wrote in his bit that Griswold's on the agenda, Loving's on the agenda, Obergefell's on the agenda. This kind of thing. Exactly what we've been saying. All this stuff's on the table. all this stuff. And these are calls for these right-wing groups to go and throw out these cases to try and get contraception overturned. Now remember, these are privacy issues. And in this day and age, you have to kind of wonder, you have to kind of worry as well. Where is the conservative movement taking us? Where is this fascistic kind of movement taking us? Now, today, the news out of Wisconsin, doctors in that state have halted all abortive care, to stopped everything, because evidently there's an 1849 law on the books there that bans abortions except when saving the life of a mother, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there where doctors can just spend six years in prison, fines up to $10,000, all kinds of stuff. And done, stopped. There's concern about so many other things in this. And I'm curious, and is this a big deal in your world? 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. I got a lot of thoughts on this, and I got a lot of questions. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, and pick more up on the other side. But just today, one of those days. Were you upset? Were you angry? Or were you just like I was? Yeah, I was expecting it. In fact, I wasn't expecting it until early next week. What's the reaction going to be? Are we going to organize around this? Or are we just going to take it? 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the summer of rage. This is what the right-wing groups are telling themselves. The summer of rage is coming. The summer of rage because all these domestic terror groups, not the insurrectionists who defecated on the floor of our Capitol. No, not those. Not those people who stabbed policemen with flagpoles and crushed them. No, it's Jane's revenge. No. In fact, Jane's revenge. They're going to be joined by unknown others. I got this email. I'm reading you verbatim what this group sent me. The group, I just, what are these the Center for Security Policy. The summer of rage could make 2020 pale in comparison. Groups like Jane's Revenge will be joined by unknown numbers of others, including possible military-age men who have entered this country illegally since Joe Biden opened our southern borders. Now, what they're saying is, because of Roe, all the anarchists and all the Marxists, because they're well organized and armed, they're going to revolution. And I love the fact that this is where they're preparing their minions, and they're preparing their minions who want this to happen. They want this civil war to happen. They want this chaos, and I'll argue, if it does happen, it's going to be them doing this. So prepare yourself for the story on the F channel of something bad happening, and then down the road finding out it's actually one of them. I got an email, anonymous. Nobody puts their name to this stuff, and it drives me crazy. If you're going to send me an email, an angry one or something like this, put your name to it. Rick, did you know that Jane Roe recanted her support for abortion and said it was harmful and dangerous to women? Why can't you liberals listen to women? Did you know that that Norma McCorvey was her name, actually, did recant, and then recanted again, and then again and again, and admitted that, look, I was just in it for the money. I needed the cash. They wrote a book for me, put my name on it, paid me for it, and it was about the cash. Here's the thing, and her story to me is an interesting one, because here was a woman who was desperate, had pregnant with her third pregnancy, desperately does not want to have a third child, put in a situation where the only option that she can think of is to be told to lie, tell the police that she was raped by a bunch of black men, because maybe in Texas at the time, they would have allowed her to have a legal abortion, given that scenario. Now, evidently that didn't work out, because clearly it didn't, because there was actually no evidence that it happened, because it didn't happen. And good on the police for actually investigating and not just finding someone to lynch. So I guess good on them in this moment. And then desperation after desperation until she finally finds a lawyer that's willing to take it on and take it into court. But hey, she had to give birth anyway and then give the child up for adoption anyhow. But I'm looking at this story and I'm listening to, and I'm looking at, the lies and the desperation and the situation that you're putting women in just because she didn't want to have a third child. She wanted to determine her future. And I step back and I'm thinking about this today. This court, what they have done is they've sentenced future women to violence that, think about the kind of things that happen, the kind of stories that like my mother's generation lived, past generations grew up understanding. And this is why, when you look at the polling, older women are much more supportive of Roe than younger women, because the younger women don't know the stories, didn't live through the botched backroom abortions, didn't live through the violence, the illness, the boyfriends, who didn't want to become fathers. This is going to sentence future women to violence against boyfriends who don't want to be fathers, who are going to do them harm, because what's coming. What's coming are going to be legislators are going to go, fine, if you're going to make these women have children, we're going to make the men pay for them. And that is going to happen. And you're going to create these desperation scenarios. You're going to put people in untenable situations with no way out. And I look at this situation with Jane Roe, with Norma McCorvey. Her story is sad in that it's one of desperation, that it's one of doing what you have to do just to get by. And is that what we want for our daughters? I stop and think about it in this moment. Why does this matter to me? Well, it matters because I've got daughters. Their future depends on their ability to control their own destiny. This is a privacy issue. Now, I am personally not in favor of abortion. Not. Do I want my daughters to have abortions? No. But do I want them to be safe? Yes. I've always said I come down on the side of safety. I am pro-safety in this. And this is where the Clinton line of safe, rare, and legal is an absolute. And I think that's where most Americans stand. I think that's where we are in this moment. But creating an environment where we're now going to leave it to these really angry states, these red states, and as Josh Hawley said, states that are going to get even redder and even more extreme, this is not a good scenario. I mean, you look at the entire almost the entire southern U.S. is all banned. There are only a handful of states on the West Coast where abortion rights are protected, and a couple of states in the Northeast and Illinois. But you go to Wisconsin, you go to Michigan, you go to Indiana, you go to Nebraska, you go to Kansas, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina. All those states are up to the political winds of whoever's in power. Where my state of Pennsylvania, I guarantee you this right now. If you're listening in Pennsylvania, I'm telling you right now, mark it on the calendar. You don't need to be very smart to figure this out. But if Doug Mastriano is governor come January of 2023, Pennsylvania will be a no rights at work state for workers, and it will ban abortions for women. That will happen on day one. There is no question about that. They are very clear about that. We will make Alabama go, oh, wow, you really are worse than us. When he says he wants to make us the Florida of the Northeast, yep, and crazier. So this is one of those moments where elections have consequences. And this is where, for my Democratic friends, my liberal friends, stop being outraged. Stop, going to Twitter and no, we need to pack the courts. We need to impeach. No, you need to organize. You need to get into the workplaces and continue to win in the work sites. You need to organize workers for the fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. And part of those conditions, abortive care. To where, look, if you're in a crazy state that doesn't allow it, that it's banned it, make your employer pay to have you sent somewhere else. Have it part of your health insurance through your union contracts. There are ways to navigate this. Organize to fix it. And then use your power, your grassroots power to politically change things. But just throwing up angry tweets or Facebook posts or Instagram, that's not helpful. And begging for $3 so we can run an ad on TV or place a billboard, not helpful. How about we do the hard work of getting into the streets and confronting people and talking about what really matters? In all of the years that I've talked about abortion with other men, with other fathers of daughters, there's only been one time where I've met someone who said that they were so opposed to abortion that if their daughter died, they wouldn't shed a tear. That was one time. Every other father I've ever met says they want their daughters to be safe. This is a starting point. This is a building block. This is an opportunity to have those conversations, to move us. 71% of us think that's a decision between a woman and her doctor, not something our government should be in the middle of. We can build on that. And for me, that's the way forward. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you got questions, you got comments, I want to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Max Burns is going to be here to share some thoughts on the top issue of the day. And again, the dog caught the car. I wonder if he'll get a stomach ache. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. That was the day spontaneous protest strikes began against the new Taft-Hartley Act. 250,000 soft coal miners in Pennsylvania walked out of the pits. 102,000 shipyard workers of the CIO's Industrial Union of Marine and Shipbuilding Workers followed the miners' example on the East and Gulf Coasts. The Greater Akron Area Council of Labor Unions joined AFL and CIO councils representing 185,000 workers, demanded that top union leaders call a general strike in defense of labor's civil liberties. Workers at Chrysler's Courchevel plant walked out in protest, even as the nation's steel steel mills and auto plants began to slow from the absence of coal. Congressman Fred Hartley, co-author of the slave labor bill, denounced the UMW as mutinous citizens and demanded immediate enforcement of the act against the walkout. Millions of trade unionists, white hot with anger at the repressive, union-busting legislation, were ready for job actions. But in this instance, William Green, head of the AFL, and Philip Murray, head of the CIO, were agreed in their opposition to general strike action. William Green reported that he had been flooded with appeals from AFL unions across the country calling for a general strike. He feared taking strike action would invite lawsuits and favored fighting through the courts and private contracts. Murray echoed Green and rejected any talk of a general protest strike. He invited leaders of the AFL and the Railroad Brotherhoods to join the CIO in a two-pronged fight against Taft-Hartley. Murray looked to challenge the act's constitutionality in the courts and hoped to unseat the congressman who passed it in the 1948 election. Unions are still hamstrung by many of the act's devastating provisions.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy, not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Rita sent me an email during the break. Said she's got a question. Since rich people have always been able to get and will continue to get abortions, what countries will the wives, mistresses, and daughters of Republican lawmakers, judges, and Supreme Court justices be traveling to in the future if and when they need to get abortions? That is an excellent question, Rita, and they're not going to have to travel out of the country. They're going to be able to do it right here because they've all got private doctors who will come to their homes as they've probably done in the past. So look, these things never touch them. They're above the law. These just for we working people. So I'm going to go with they're not going to have to leave the country and be that inconvenienced. But if they were, I'm sure it would be some tourist destination where they could then plan a beach vacation and get a tax cut for doing it. So let's throw that extra cherry on the top. Yeah, just for the heck of it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the big story of the day. I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. He's got some incredible work out over at The Hill. You want to check out his piece on Dr. Oz, basically throwing the Trump under the bus. Good stuff there. But Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you think? To read his question, which country do you think? Do you agree with me that they don't have to leave the country, or do you think there's a travel destination for the ultra wealthy to get the abortive care that they want for their daughters and wives?
Well,
And
Rick, you're
mistresses?
absolutely right. I mean, the fact is, in the same way that the war on drugs was essentially a war on people who had to get their drugs on the street, this war on abortion is going to be a war that essentially criminalizes women who don't have the resources to have private doctors or to take leisure trips over to socialist Europe to get abortions. This is as much a war on the low income and the marginalized as it is a war just on women. But I mean, make no mistake, this is a war on women, and the poor women, women of color, they will suffer disproportionately from this, and people will die.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying, look, I don't think this. You're the Democratic strategist here. You're the one who's probably trying to figure out how this is going to work out in November. I don't think it's going to matter that much in November because I don't think we're going to really see the effects. I don't think we're going to hear the stories yet. I don't think people are going to lose loved ones. I don't think the ramifications are going to hit us just yet. Down the road, yes, but I don't think it's going to be this election. I'm curious your thought.
Well, from what I've seen on the street, and I was down in Washington Square Park here in New York City, where there was literally a sea of people. I mean, I couldn't see the end of it from where I was. And these are rolling out all over the country with very little notice. There is a huge upswell here, not just among super lefties, but among suburban conservatives who never imagined that they would have to actually pay the social price for supporting sort of low tax, pro business Republicans. Now those people are finding that their own kids are now threatened, and they are furious that the Republican Party's gone so far beyond what they expected.
So do you think it's going to matter in November? Because I'm not so sure, but do you think it's going to matter?
I do, but that's conditional on Democrats making it matter. Right now, especially in Washington, there's almost a sense that voters will just come out for us now, that this bad situation will drive them into our arms. But Democrats have to go out and organize. They have to support abortion action groups in states and provide a plan to protect these women. Because right now, protecting them is the key priority for this White House.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is where I don't know about your email box, but mine full today of people going, hey, send us money so we can begin to fight back. And I'm going, where were you yesterday? Where were you a month ago? Where were you 6 months ago? This has been a fight that's been going on for 30 years. Why now do you need my $3 to begin the fight?
No, and that's absolutely right. I mean, this is a fight where Democrats have had opportunities in the past to codify Roe versus Wade in Congress, and they chose not to do it. And they did that in part because they thought this would never seriously be attacked this way. The idea that a standing precedent 50 years old would be overturned wasn't realistic to the Democrats in Washington. Unfortunately, had they been listening to the people on the ground in these states, the abortion groups that are fighting, they would have seen this coming and we could have done something. But again, short planning in Washington.
Yeah, because that's my frustration. How could you not see it coming? They've been telling us this for years, for decades. The dog has been chasing us all this time. They're going, when we catch it, we're going to chew the bumper off. And when we chew the bumper off, we're going right through the trunk, right through the back seat, and right into your behind. And, well, they're right in our behind right now.
Yeah, and there is now we are in a crisis situation where we're seeing the fruits of 30 years of Republican planning and single-minded focus of forget legislation, forget serving constituents. Republicans are there to put in federal judges, and they've gotten their return on investment right here. And this is going to be awfully hard in the near term for Democrats to get around.
No, this is bad. On a number of levels, and look, there maybe I always default to despair, and I think we do this as human beings, and I go, maybe we deserve on a certain level, the beating we're going to take, because ultimately the only time we seem to act in a right direction is out of pain and misery, but sadly people are going to suffer, people are going to die, lives are at stake here, and is that what it's going to take?
Yeah, and I think we see now that the American people, for all of their faults, are not a people who willingly accept their freedoms and fundamental equality being taken away. I mean, we have fought wars to ensure the equality of people. This is how deeply it is ingrained in us. And for the Supreme Court, for Alito to say in a vast judicial overreach that effectively only legislation that those Republicans on the court view as in line with American traditions is allowed to be law is going to create a massive political movement in this country. And we're seeing that in the streets tonight.
No, they're most certainly remaking this country in ways that I don't know a lot of people really thought about. When John Roberts said he was going to call balls and strikes, I guess we should have asked which game he was actually playing. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Max Burns. Max is a Democratic strategist, also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. Make sure you check out the work that he does, thedailybeast.com, the website. You can check that out. Now, I'm looking at this, and the hearings are going on. This happens. I can see the messaging happening right before our very eyes. That all the crimes that have come out over the hearings, all of Trump's, all of Trump's crimes, all the corruption, all of the attempts to overthrow our government, the coup attempt, all of that stuff now in the eyes of the Republicans, forgiven because, well, look, this is the legacy. The legacy is he put an end to Roe. The legacy is he's going to put an end to the regulatory state, which means corporate America is going to be able to steamroll we working people. The policies that the right wing have been dreaming about for decades, the end of the 20th century, Trump has brought us. So all of the crimes that we've seen come out in these hearings, I think this is his get out of jail free card. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, it's certainly what he hopes. He released a statement today essentially taking credit for this decision. And in a way, that's true. I mean, the 3 justices he put on that court were instrumental in this. But the problem is the American people don't really agree. We're seeing, I think, far more Americans watching these hearings than maybe even the committee expected. And we're seeing it start to change opinions. I mean, there's a poll out last week that showed that now half of Republicans believe that the January 6th attack was planned by Republicans. That's more than double what it was a year ago. And that's entirely due to the fact that we're seeing these crimes laid out in text messages, in videos, in direct testimony from prominent Republicans. And there's no arguing that that is having a negative effect on Republican popularity.
Yeah, no. Are you surprised that people are really paying attention to these hearings and how compelling they have been? I mean, I'll be honest. I've been following this stuff for all during the Trump term, and I thought I knew as much as anyone. There have been some things there that made me go, "Wow, this is something."
Yeah, I think it's amazing how much we've seen that we didn't know. How much of this ended up not leaked to the press. Much like the Mueller investigation, they've kept a lot of things very confidential, which just shows how seriously they're taking this job. But no, to your point, I'm very surprised. I remember talking to you a while back and saying that I worried that they had waited too long, that this was off Americans' plate. And polls showed that it was. But when these came back, I mean, it became the #1 issue for people again. You're seeing a huge amount of social conversation about this, and a huge amount of movement in polls because of what we're seeing here. And it's because it's just so blatant. It is just so transparently criminal.
No, and that's the thing that gets me. I mean, the the audacity. I mean, the fact that these people really thought that that history was going to remember them as great people, and they documented their treason, they documented their sedition, they documented all this stuff. They wrote memos, Max. There are memos.
Yeah, and as we saw from this from the last session here with the Justice Department officials, these are people who expected to win and never face punishment. And we know that because 5 days after this insurrection, when it became clear it had failed, 3 Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mo Brooks, and Matt Gaetz, wrote to the White House begging for pardons that cover their entire careers. They're not even specific pardons. They are pardons for every crime committed over their entire adult life. I mean, that's a sign of someone who's done something really, really wrong.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I talked about this yesterday about Matt Gaetz. I mean, if I'm Matt Gaetz, I'm simply asking for a pardon for my entire family tree because of all the criming that's gone on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt Gaetz requested it multiple times. He came back 3 or 4 times asking for this, even before the insurrection, for his other crimes. And at this point, if I'm Matt Gaetz, I'm worried that all of this is also feeding into that federal investigation into his potential sex trafficking.
Jeez. Yeah, and the thing is the thing that gets me is this is the party of family values. These are the people who ran around with the pocket constitutions. These are the people who waved the flag. These are the people who with the photo ops. These are the people who wrapped themselves in the military. These are the people who were America first. These are the people who are supposed to be country first. My congressman evidently begging for Scott Perry, a general, begging for a pardon. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's alarming. And what is more alarming to me is the subtext of what's not being discussed as much, which is that a lot of these Republicans testifying said they didn't want any part in this, that it was criminal, it was so plainly going to fail. And they're basically telling you that if a smarter, more capable Republican president had done this, if it had been more likely to succeed, they might have joined in. It's just not a gamble they were willing to take. And that's not the reassuring hero statement I think the media is making it out to be.
Yeah, no. Like I said from the beginning, there are no heroes here. These are all monsters. Just in this moment, they upheld their oath, and they didn't want to go to jail. Radical self-interest at play here more than anything, because the one thing that lawyers and across the board, most of these people are lawyers, the one thing they understand is you can go to the Four Seasons landscaping facility and make all the wild accusations and claims you want, but the second you sit down and you put your hand on the Bible and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, you better tell the truth.
Yeah, and I think it just shows that it is a party that has no morals. It is an opportunistic party. I mean, all you need to do is be smart about your crime, and Republicans will gleefully join you. 2 of the 5 individuals responsible for helping Republicans effectively steal the state of Florida in 2000 now sit on the Supreme Court. I mean, there are rewards to this crime. It's just that Trump was so bad, no one would work with him.
And his claims were so fantastical. I mean, when you're talking to Brad Raffensperger and you're going, hey, I won the state by 400,000 votes, but go find me 11,800 because that's what I need. I mean, there's a problem there. There's a problem of credibility. There's a problem of sanity. There's a problem of you're just freaking delusional. You didn't win by 400,000, you moron.
And it does increasingly seem like something was wrong with Donald Trump, which of course everyone says, of course, but I mean, truly, the fact that he was telling the acting attorney general, just lie and say the election was a fraud and then leave it to me and the Republicans and we'll fix the rest is a remarkably, it's something you hear out of the stories of authoritarian takeovers of democratic governments. I mean, it's not something you expect to hear a president of the United States trying to bring the Justice Department into a scheme to overthrow democracy.
Yeah, it was like a bad cartoon. You know, I forget what one guy called him phony soprano, which I thought was kind of funny.
No, it is absolutely like these. I am amazed at how not only have each of these hearings had something very viral and really shareable for the public, but they've also revealed a lot of information that even the press didn't know. So we're getting this story, and as this story builds, the hearings will go into July. Republicans are not going to be able to outrun this. No,
and what I want to happen next, because there are a couple of those depositions that I would really love to sit and watch. The deposition of Hirschman, I would love to watch that one. The deposition of Bill Barr, I would like to see that. There's a bunch of those I now have to see. There's got to be a way of putting that on pay-per-view to help support our national debt or help feed hungry children or do something positive. But, something to put this stuff out here so that we can see exactly what they said.
And it seems like we'll get even more. It seems like the committees now says it's talking to Ginny Thomas about potentially testifying publicly. And if that's the case, if Ginny Thomas is in public and under oath, oh boy, we're going to hear some things, because she is a true believer in many of these conspiracies and has no shame in telling you that. And I don't think the American people are quite ready for just how nuts she is.
Oh, no. See, now this is fun. And Mo Brooks wants to come because he wants to clear his name. I'm hoping my Congressman Scott Perry, I know you listen. So if you are listening, I know you said you didn't ask for a pardon. There's a place for you to say that under oath in front of the committee. By all means, do that. I'm hoping you'll do that. But I'm hoping all of these people, Boebert and Green and Gates, put them all under oath and let them all speak until their heart's content. Bring the crazy. Oh, that would be entertaining.
And it will do the exact thing Republicans do not want, which is focusing this conversation on the fact that they actively not just supported, but materially funded and in some cases organized an attack on the United States government. They would love to talk about anything else right now. It is imperative that we not let them.
No, this is, they keep saying no one's paying attention. Everyone cares about gas prices. Yeah, I care about gas prices. But you know what else I care about? Treason, sedition, coup attempts. I care about the next attempt that you're already in the process of planning. And this is what's come up, what I think is important that Benny Thompson keeps bringing up, the chairman, that we're not out of the woods. That we've got to investigate this, but they're still planning this. And as you pointed out, someone a little bit smarter pulls this off.
Yeah, and we're already seeing Senator Josh Hawley start to say that, start to promote this plan of using abortion restrictions and saying, let's make life so bad for women in red states that they'll move to blue states so we can have a perpetual Republican electoral college advantage. I mean, lest we think that this was ever about values or morals to Republicans, it's entirely about marginalizing women into a permanent Republican majority. It's as simple as that.
Can you imagine that world? I mean, just listen to what you just said. You're going to have women move to blue states so that they can have super red states. So you're going to have a bunch of red incel states where the population will dwindle because there'll be no reproduction. That maybe not a bad thing. Maybe they'll die off. We'll get rid of them in a generation or two. Maybe that's the path forward.
Yeah, and I mean, half of the workforce in some of these states is women. I don't know where they think they're going to get money for their roads or their schools. Well, they're not funding their schools, but for their gun giveaways that the governors are doing in these states to celebrate this. I mean, this is insanity, and it's a plan that just shows you these Republicans do not care about how this harms the country as long as they can win and rule over the ashes of it.
Crazy, crazy times. But Max, I appreciate the thoughts. All good stuff. But ultimately, it's going to come down to us getting back out in the streets, organizing together and fighting back and using our politicians as the tools that they are to get the stuff done that we need to get done. And we got to do it. Appreciate the time, Max.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff, Max Burns. Make sure you check out his work over at the Daily Beast. We'll get links out on social media. How you can take a look at that. I'm just imagine that. All the women are just going to leave and they'll be super red states so we can have a super majority. And I'm actually not 100% opposed to that. Incel states. All right, I can see it. Your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1971. At 2:51 a.m., Battalion 12 Chief Leo Najarian of Los Angeles heard that there had been a tunnel explosion. That February, a 6.5 earthquake had killed 65 people in the area. Now it seemed tragedy had struck again. Just the night before, Chief Najarian had been called out to the same address. The Lockheed Shipbuilding and Construction Company was digging a tunnel over a mile long for the Metropolitan Water District. Chief Najarian had been called out when 4 workers were injured due to a minor explosion. He had found that the workers at the site were not testing frequently enough for methane gas. One spark from a tool could touch off an explosion. Leaving instructions to test more frequently, he left and spent the next day worried. So when another explosion alarm came from the same address, he rushed to the scene. There he found the second explosion was much worse than the first. Workers were trapped 5 miles into the tunnel. Rescue workers attempted to reach the trapped miners through a vent shaft near their position. Paul Badgley, a miner at the scene, was part of 4 rescue attempts. He described the heartbreaking effort, stating, quote, "The first time we went in there, I could hear the guys hollering for help. The third and fourth time, I couldn't hear them. It's a hell of a feeling not being able to help them when you hear them hollering." 17 workers lost their lives. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the Lockheed Company was put on trial and fined heavily for their negligence. California passed stricter mining and tunnel laws and established a state occupational safety and health administration. 19 Los Angeles firefighters were awarded the Medal of Valor for their bravery. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So lots of fun on the Supreme Court front. Got an email asking the question, will New York City need to discontinue having New Year's Eve celebrations and countdowns in Times Square for fear of having millions or so people now with legal concealed handguns? That's a good question. I actually don't know. We're going to be capping people in Times Square. Yeah, that ought to be interesting. Let's go to the phones. We've got Eric on line 1. Eric, what's on your mind, brother?
Brother Rick,
how are you?
I just wanted to say how, I think doing good. It's funny, though, that this is just the irony drifts, right? Because now, oh, yeah, we need abortion bans because we want to stop those abortions. That's the logic, right? Yet, when it comes to guns, oh, no, we can't do that. We can't ban weapons. We got to put more weapons into more people's hands. I don't understand that logic. But maybe one doesn't work for the other. Like, we can't prosecute corporate criminals like we do street criminals. Crime in the streets,
yep.
Crime in the suites. Oh, no. Those are 2 totally different things. Recidivism, nah. And these are the family values people, right? That's what kills me, because it's almost like, you know what? I can't get a girl on my own. I need to coerce her. So I need to knock her up, force her to marry me, and force her to carry my child, because, dang it, I can't do it any other way.
That's incel world. That's conservative world for you.
Yikes. But you know what? We just got to take a deep breath. We just got to keep going out there and controlling the dialogue and the narrative, because, where I'm around, or, where I'm at, I'm kind of in a northwest suburb of Minneapolis, kind of on the border of Trump country. People see it. People see the hypocrisy. I mean, they don't like a lot of this stuff any more than the next guy. But it's, there's just that knee-jerk reaction to, you know what? I hate being treated like an like a dummy,
yep.
like not a human being, like just a thing that needs to be managed, right? I'm a person. And I think the more that we have these conversations, the more that we can spread these conversations and redirect what's going on, I think that's what's going to make the difference, because people see it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people at the street level see this stuff. And I think it's going to be a very interesting election cycle. I mean, sure, they're going to make hay about this for the election, but you know what also is going to be made hay of? Labor unions, living conditions. Because you know what? You're right. Roe v. Wade, so what kind of a world are we bringing these kids in? So
exactly.
We have childcare, right? So, just go down the list, right?
Absolutely. No, these are, look, we got to get out there and have these conversations, fight these fights. Good stuff, Eric. I appreciate the call, man.
Now, keep up the good work, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Your calls after this, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is the time. This is an opportunity. As bad as this is, still an opportunity. Quick break, right back after this. Remember, if you miss any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast there at the website or wherever you get your podcasts.
Today I'm calling on Congress to suspend the federal gas tax for the next 90 days.
President Biden seeks temporary tax cut to lower prices at the pump. Parts of the Arctic warming 5 times faster than the rest of the planet. Plus,
several countries have reported receiving significantly less Russian gas than what would be expected in the coming weeks.
International Energy Agency warns Europe Russia could shut down gas exports this winter.
All of those warnings and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You heard President Biden asking for a federal gas tax holiday, so how are you going to vote on this proposal?
I'll vote no.
Republicans never met a tax they didn't want to cut unless cutting it would help the American people and a Democratic president. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you would think that Republicans would be delighted about Joe Biden calling for a tax cut, but not so much?
Yep, not so much.
Huh.
President Biden on Wednesday asked Congress to enact a 3-month suspension of the federal gasoline tax, that's roughly 18 cents per gallon, and also asked states to suspend their gas taxes or provide some other kind of relief to consumers as a way to temporarily reduce retail gas prices.
Retail gas gouging?
Now, I fully understand that a gas tax holiday alone is not going to fix the problem, but it will provide families some immediate relief, just a little bit of breathing room as we continue working to bring down prices for the long haul.
Breathing room. That's an ironic way to put an incentive to sell more gas.
Republicans in Congress are practically giddy, eager to block the concept because they believe paying for Americans at the pump will benefit Republicans politically in the midterm elections.
How unlike them.
But critics say it doesn't address the root causes of high gasoline prices, which are Russia's invasion of Ukraine, constrained refining capacity, and oil companies price gouging consumers while pulling in record profits.
Yep.
The critics also note oil companies and gas stations can simply pocket most of the money without lowering consumer prices. Biden hit back against Republicans' false claims about his energy policies, noting that domestic production is now higher on average than during the Trump administration.
Go figure.
He also noted the oil industry is shoveling profits to shareholders rather than reopening refinery capacity that was shut down during the pandemic. Long-term, suspending the federal gas tax reduces revenue going into the Highway Trust Fund for improving roads and bridges. It all underscores the consequences of America being so very dependent on oil.
Yes, it does.
And, of course, despite the record high gas prices, AAA says a record number of Americans plan to hit the road for the July 4th weekend.
Of course.
Also dangerously dependent on fossil fuels is Europe. The International Energy Agency this week warned European leaders to develop contingency plans now in case Russia completely shuts off all natural gas exports this winter. Its director said that Russia's recent reductions in shipments under claims of so-called technical issues are actually, quote, strategic, making it harder for European countries to fill up their gas storage now, increasing Russia's leverage come winter.
Yep.
In other news, a new study finds that portions of the Arctic are warming 5 to 7 times faster than the rest of the planet, much faster than previously thought due to man-made climate change, which, of course, is caused by burning fossil fuels. The Arctic matters because emerging scientific evidence links Arctic warming to changes in the jet stream, which in turn increase the frequency of blocking patterns that intensify extreme weather in North America, Europe, and Asia.
So climate change is causing the Arctic to warm really fast, and when the Arctic warms really fast, that makes climate change even worse.
Basically. But some good news.
Not a moment too soon.
The Biden administration has reached an historic agreement with 5 Native American tribes over the management of the Bears Ears National Monument in Utah. The unprecedented cooperative agreement gives the tribes, who have inhabited the region for centuries, more input in the day-to-day management of the lands. It is a big step in repairing the federal government's relationship with the tribes.
Nice. Wasn't that the national monument that Donald Trump tried to pretty much kill?
Yes. And finally, a new analysis of the global offshore wind industry by Renewable UK finds that the global boom in offshore wind projects has been, quote, nothing short of staggering, with projects in 2022 that are double the capacity of just 1 year ago. China has the biggest offshore wind project pipeline in the report, with the UK and the US not too far behind.
Well, it's nice to be not too far behind for a change. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, the dog caught the car chewing the tires off, and not surprising. This is what conservatives have said they're going to do, and they've done it. Question is what are Democrats going to do? You know, as we talked with Max Burns a moment ago, you know, what are Democratic lawmakers going to do? What are they going to push for? Because, you know, as someone reminded me today, this is all happening while Democrats control the White House, control the Senate, and control the House. Now, their control very, very marginal, very tenuous, but they're still technically in control. They still can do something, even if it just is, well, for show. This is part of it. Here to share some thoughts on maybe the direction now that the Supreme Court hath given their decision. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob is a former congressman and political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, any surprise, any shock, any dismay, anything today when you woke up and found the news?
Well, I think that the shock for everybody on either side of the issue, and in particular the shock for people that are for abortion rights, was coming when the draft was leaked. I mean, and then people thought, well, maybe it's not going to happen, but I think it settled in that it was a matter of when. Was it going to be this week or next week? I was surprised because I did predict next week, although I said if they do it, Friday always seems to be the controversial thing Friday. It's the old rule in Washington, D.C. anyway.
Yeah, the 5
o'clock. But I thought
time.
Actually maybe it would come next week.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do it as Clarence Thomas, you know, put Jenny in the RV and rode out of town.
That's right. Everybody was talking about that. So now the Democratic side has, a couple of moves in particular. You made the point about technically the government is under the control of the Democratic side, although you have the Senate, and we all know, what happens in the Senate. And so that's a problem, obviously. But I think some type of stance or position codification, which, a lot of people have said, well, that should have been done when Obama was there and they had the Democratic control. Why didn't they codify it? And I think nobody wanted to stir anything in particular up at that time because people didn't think this would happen. And that's probably why there was no codification then. But the fight for this issue is going to eventually, due to the Senate and makeup of the Senate, I think the fight for this issue obviously is going to be, in particular, in the states, because that's what's happened here with the Supreme Court ruling. So you're going to see state by state arguments on this issue. Now, I think we can brace ourselves for what the articles are saying, weeks of, they're saying possible violence. Let's hope that doesn't happen, because I think that if things turn violent for weeks, that could on the political side of things could not be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's being reported by people are hoping that there'll be violence for weeks.
That's what I was just going to say.
This is a media that's bloodthirsty, that wants this. So that, look, we can look. No, I don't think that's going to happen at all. And if it does, it's going to be by the people who want this to happen, the Frank Gaffneys in the world, in the Center for Security, and those nonsensical folks who are saying, it's the summer of rage is coming, Bob. The summer of rage, and the Jane's rage is coming, and they're going to bring people across the border, military-age men, and others are coming. Yeah, where in the hell do you dream this stuff up at? But it's all about fear. It's all about scaring people because the anarchists are coming, Bob. The anarchists.
I don't think there's going to be a summer of months of violence. Something can happen, no question, in any situation at all. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on the states now at this particular time of what the state governments are going to do.
See, I think the focus now is going to be not on Republicans but on Democrats. I know it's where it should be. Why haven't you done anything? What are you doing now? The Republicans are immovable. They're not going anywhere. This is now, if you're in favor of women's reproductive rights, if you believe that this should be an issue between a woman and her doctor, Republicans are not your savior. The Republicans are the ones who did this to you. It's the Democrats who are the ones who are going to be movable on this issue, not Republicans. And this is where I see this a little differently than some of my Democratic friends, that they think that, we can maybe move some of the. No, you're not moving Republicans. No. They're dug in.
No. You're right. If any movement is going to come on this and speaking out, it's going to be from basically the Democratic side. On purpose today, I spoke to a few people, and I made sure that the people that I spoke to were basically 45 and under. I did it on purpose today.
Right.
And they were people that I know that are supporting reproductive rights. And I asked them the same series of questions, how do you feel? And obviously they gave an answer. They don't feel it's right. And I asked males and females, but in particular, I asked the question, what do you think about, your response in the fall, for the House and the Senate? And I just didn't pick up that I'm going to go get them,
Yep.
in the fall. Rick, I didn't pick that up from a couple of the people, but not from the majority of people. Now, it's not a scientific poll. I'm not trying to say it is, but these are people that I know that are very genuine, will give you an answer. And I did it again on purpose of 45 and under for a reason.
No,
they haven't had the cultural, traditional exposure yet to a world without Roe versus Wade.
Right. No, and this is what I've been saying all along. They're going to have to experience what comes out of this. Because, and I said this a while ago, I had a conversation with a young woman who believes that it's not going to affect her, that if she needs it, it's going to be there for her. She'll figure out a way. And you go, no, not when
from another state or whatever,
or whatever. And you go, no, not when the entire system is rigged against you. No, you're not going to do that. Good luck. Good. But I give you credit for thinking that way. But when the whole system is stacked against you, that's a difference.
Well, also a few people did say today, well, the Biden administration is not going to enforce anything across state lines, or the morning after pill or certain pills to be shipped. Quote, you could have them sent to one state and shipped to you, from another. But I did point out, okay, what about the possibility in 2 years of a different administration? You have to say these things because, again, these people have not been conditioned, and I say culturally, in the step of what things were like. If we were asking people back in the 60s, it would be different.
Yeah, I did a show, a couple of month or so ago, where there was a big march going on, and across the country there were a bunch of marches for abortion. Right when the memo leaked, and we had an 80-year-old woman call into our Saturday show in New York, and she was out in the streets marching, for the right for women to have choice, because she lived in an era where it was illegal. and didn't want that to happen to this generation. And it's that kind of, like what you're saying. She remembered what it was like before Roe and how bad things were. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst, talking about what's going on with the court. Also, maybe some thoughts on what Democrats should be doing. So that's the question, Bob. You've done this. You've been in Congress. You've run campaigns. You've been in moments. You were part of Newt Gingrich's Contract on America. What campaign would you run if you were someone in charge of this? What direction do you think that the brain trust should be looking in the coming weeks and months to make this an actual issue come November?
Well, I think that's obviously the big point. By ending the national abortion rights, the question I would ask is there going to be a fire lit in the 2022 election process? And I think that, if people are, saying, hey, we're going to equate having an administration who makes appointments of Supreme Court justices and having a Congress that, is supportive, in order to do that, the revenge, if you want to call it, on this issue has to be at the ballot box. And I think the president obviously came out and is urging people to put Democratic candidates, in power. Now, I understand it's not the only issue, because you and I have talked about this. You cannot, if I were running campaigns, you cannot ignore gasoline prices, inflation, etc. But I think that the system needs to make their voices heard, and then they have to make the point that this fall you have to look at who will be part of a process that you elect, that maybe this decision will, be in a different light depending on who is controlling the House and the Senate and by what numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that has to be part of a campaign.
Yeah,
and candidates have to be nailed down on this issue.
Nailed down. That's a good way of putting it. No, I mean, look, if you're in the Senate and you voted for Gorsuch or you voted for Kavanaugh or you voted for the handmaiden, you should be held accountable, because, I look at Susan Collins and Joe Manchin, who both said, well, that's not what they told us. Yeah, I'm sure it's what they told you. I'm sure. Are you naive? Are you stupid? No, you're not naive or stupid. You knew what they were going to do, as we all did. And that's the part in this that is frustrating to me. We all knew we were going to get here.
Right. Let's look at something. Not what Mitch McConnell said about the courageous, and correct thing to do. Let's look at Nevada. Let's look at Republican Senate nominee Adam Laxalt, right? And let's look at what he said. He said the ruling shouldn't matter to voters because abortion is legal in his state. He said the people of Nevada have already voted to make abortion rights legal in the state. Look what look what tactic Laxalt took. There's going to be candidates, doing that. And then, in your state, the Democratic nominee for governor, he's running an ad.
Josh Shapiro.
Highlighting Mastriano, right?
Well, he's the Republican.
Yeah, well, but the Democrat Shapiro is running an ad, some type of ad. I haven't seen the ad yet, but it's about Doug Mastriano's support for outlawing all abortion, including cases of rape, incest, and they're saying, hey, he's an extremist. So there's a kind of a split reaction, on by some of the Republicans. There's a split reaction because they know, they want to try to, make this downplay. Shelley Moore Capito in West Virginia, I served with her. She's the senator. What did she say today? This ruling does not create a federal ban on abortion, as has been suggested by my colleagues. She said that today. So,
yeah,
it's going to be all over the place.
It is going,
and people have to be nailed down in the races.
And this is where Democrats had better get their messaging down.
They've got to get the messaging. They've got to be on point with it. They have to make appointments. They have to ask, questions. We'd like to have an appointment with you. Don't curse or scream, make the point. If there's a town hall, I doubt anybody does town halls anymore, probably in the Congress, but if there's a town hall, people have to be there and ask the questions. Just like what Shelley Moore Capito said. Ask her to please clarify that.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I find interesting is they talk about states' rights, and we're just returning it to the states, Bob. This isn't a ban. This is just returning it where it belongs, to the states. And yet now you got Kevin McCarthy and Mike Pence both supporting a federal ban on abortions.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, it's very interesting the amount of people are saying this is very due to the nature of, quote, life. This is very, very targeted by the court. There are not going to be any other rights that fit into this mold down the road, meaning LGBTQ. They're trying to spin that right away so that the LGBTQ community and supporters don't get, quote, riled up.
Well, shouldn't they be riled up? Because didn't Clarence Thomas basically say, "Hey, you're next"?
I think anything could happen. When it comes to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court could have ruled a different way on this and still ruled another way on other issues like that.
Wow.
You never know with the Supreme Court.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you've been around this game a long time. Could you have imagined us being in this position in this moment?
No, you're right. I didn't. I thought there would be certain rulings out there that would match within a state's ability to, pass certain laws. I just didn't think there would be the blanket Roe v. Wade turnaround. That I didn't think.
Let's change gears a little bit. Let me last couple of questions I got for you. I want to go over to the hearing yesterday because I'm looking at this now as, and maybe you'll think I'm wrong, but I'm looking, in conservative world, Trump today got a get out of jail free card for all his crimes and all the stuff that the January 6th committee is bringing out because, hey, he brought us this. Look how wonderful he is. All of his crimes forgiven because all about the babies. Curious your thoughts on the hearing yesterday.
The hearing gave one of the most bizarre layouts of an internal chaotic White House like we have not seen in modern time. You have the Oval Office meeting, and you have this guy Clark, and he wants to replace Rosen. He has this conversation with the president, and this Clark is an environmental lawyer. And then you have Donahue and Rosen, and they just turned right around and said his credentials, he's not qualified, he can't serve as Attorney General. Then they stood up, and including with then White House counsel, and they called Clark's plan a murder-suicide pact. This isn't Chuck Schumer saying this, or Nancy Pelosi. These are internal White House counsel. And then they called it impossible, it's absurd, it's not going to happen. And finally, Clark was willing to seize because of Italian satellites, seize the voting machines and tell only certain states, including your state of Pennsylvania, to turn around and take these home. We're the Fed. We want you to do this. Now, I'm looking through this. If you read this, if not for Rosen and Donahue and the White House counsel, but in particular Rosen and Donahue saying, if you do this, we are going to have instant mass resignations in the Justice Department, which would have thrown all kinds of chaos. But if Trump would have continued with this and the White House would have continued with this, I'm having this vision of somebody in the Joint Chiefs of Staff getting a call saying, you got to go down the street and decide who's going to sit in the Oval Office.
Yeah, I mean, and if
possibly
you heard
that could have happened.
No, if you heard Bill Barr, part of it I wonder is just him patting himself on the back for getting involved. But his statement of, if we didn't look into the claims of fraud at the beginning, there may not have been a transfer of power at all.
So I thought it was amazing. Clark's home was raided, and by the way, I'm sure his lawyers must have passed out when he went on Tucker Carlson. Really, Jeffrey Clark went on Tucker Carlson. His lawyers had to have just passed out. His home just got raided, and and he's on there. So I think that, again, I'm going to go back to something you and I talked about in the last couple of weeks about these hearings, and that is that I think, especially after looking at this hearing and seeing what the Justice Department and Trump allies were telling him about this, fixated 78-day plan that he was 24/7 fixated on to stay in no matter what, I do believe that this hurts him at the level where, I'm not going to talk about the citizen crowds, but the level where people kind of that are in the know are saying, "Oh, please don't do this. Don't run again." I think for what it's worth, it dampens that side of it.
Yeah, I think you're already seeing some of that stuff. But if you stop and you think about it, and I think I think it was you who brought it up to me. If you stop and think about, had he conceded, had he said, "Okay, I'm going to honor I don't agree with it. I think there were irregularities, but I'm going to the courts have ruled. I'm going to honor the rule of law. We're going to make it look like we're going to go along with this transfer of power, and then in this moment, all the stuff that's going wrong." Think of the position that he would be in. Think of the position Republicans would be in to really stick it to the Democrats, and how, because of his narcissism, his thin skin, and how just being a poor loser has put him and the country at a really disadvantage and in a horrible spot.
Well, and because of his sewn at the hip status with Rudy Giuliani, who, pops some gins and says, "Let's go, take over the country, Mr. President. You're the man." And due to Rudy Giuliani and a few others, he buys into this entire thing that he can actually pull this off. But I would go back to the fact, had he conceded and said, "I did the right thing. You're gonna learn what's going to happen out here." Got in the presidential car, went through the process like presidents do. The transition of power. I think right now he could be saying, "Oh, told you this, told you that." I really think he might have shocked people by his behavior of doing that. I think he would be pretty well in the driver's seat right now.
Oh, without question.
Instead of in the questionable seat that he's in.
Yeah, without question. So let me ask you: polling has like 60% of the people thinking he should be charged with something. Do you think he gets charged with anything?
No. Nothing. No.
See,
the only Achilles heel, and I said this in 2016, and now there's a second one, but the only Achilles heel is New York State, and now Georgia is a potential. If anything's going to happen there legally to he or his family or his business, but no, he does not get charged federally out of this.
See, I said from the beginning, I was 100% certain I'm there, and then there's a crack in that certainty for me after the hearing yesterday, after they drew a line to Eastman and drew the line to Clark and all of this stuff, that they've made him the center of this whole conspiracy, that he just wouldn't let it go. The comment of just lie and say things are bad and we'll take care of it with the Republican congressman. I mean, that's damning.
Look, there is some type of political mental illness with Rudy Giuliani. I'm going to go back to him for a second. The fact that he could even sell these ideas, which he was an integral part of it, and the fact that the president could even buy into these ideas, and they thought they could do this and just manipulate any way they want. I mean, it's the freakiest, weirdest political thing I think that we've seen in decades. Yeah. But I'm just not sure from the other side of it that the Justice Department will initiate anything against a former president. I just don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But there's a small, growing, very small part of me that's going, I don't know. But Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney. I'm hopeful. We'll see. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Got to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1971. At 2:51 a.m., Battalion 12 Chief Leo Najarian of Los Angeles heard that there had been a tunnel explosion. That February, a 6.5 earthquake had killed 65 people in the area. Now it seemed tragedy had struck again. Just the night before, Chief Najarian had been called out to the same address. The Lockheed Shipbuilding and Construction Company was digging a tunnel over a mile long for the Metropolitan Water District. Chief Najarian had been called out when 4 workers were injured due to a minor explosion. He had found that the workers at the site were not testing frequently enough for methane gas. One spark from a tool could touch off an explosion. Leaving instructions to test more frequently, he left and spent the next day worried. So when another explosion alarm came from the same address, he rushed to the scene. There he found the second explosion was much worse than the first. Workers were trapped 5 miles into the tunnel. Rescue workers attempted to reach the trapped miners through a vent shaft near their position. Paul Badgley, a miner at the scene, was part of 4 rescue attempts. He described the heartbreaking effort, stating, quote, "The first time we went in there, I could hear the guys hollering for help. The third and fourth time, I couldn't hear them. It's a hell of a feeling not being able to help them when you hear them hollering." 17 workers lost their lives. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the Lockheed Company was put on trial and fined heavily for their negligence. California passed stricter mining and tunnel laws and established a state occupational safety and health administration. 19 Los Angeles firefighters were awarded the Medal of Valor for their bravery. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy. Not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting day as we've been talking about, and look, nobody should be surprised. As I've said, no shock, no dismay. This should be a moment of resolution. This should be a moment of dust ourselves off, stand up, begin to fight back, and change for the future. Look, the right wing, they They've spent the last 50 years trying to undo all of the progressive movement of the 20th century, wanting to take us back to the to the Stone Age, and we're moving in that direction. It's our responsibility to begin to push back. And look, this is where we are. Politically, got to get active. Democracy is participatory. Anyway, here to share a little bit of thoughts on the decision today, and also the reason that I was going to have Melissa Cropper here on the program was talk about Ohio's gun fetish. Really, the lunch lady going to be packing heat? That's why I've asked Melissa Cropper to come talk with us. She's the president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers, also the secretary-treasurer of the Ohio AFL-CIO. Melissa, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with obviously the big issue of the day. Roe has gone. It's done. It goes back to the states. This is where the fight now picks up. States like Ohio, states like Pennsylvania, where I live, states across the country. This is where the fight begins. Is this a labor issue?
It has to be a labor issue. A large percentage of the labor are women or people who are married to women. And obviously this has economic impacts on families. So it has to be a labor issue. We have to be out there making people aware of this decision, how it impacts families, and be willing to step up and do something about it.
And it's also an economic issue. I've said from the beginning, wealthy women are going to get the care that they need. They always have. They always do. This disproportionately will fall. The harm will fall on the backs of poor and working class women, as history has shown us. I mean, I'm not reading a crystal ball. I'm not Magellan discovering new things. This is what my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation, this is what past generations, this is what they lived through.
Correct. And like you said, it's going to impact our people who are in the workforce the hardest, the people, our marginalized communities. It's going to impact their ability to work. It's going to impact their health. And that's why it has to be a labor issue. And we have to stand up and fight back. And we have to make people aware that this is just the beginning. I mean, as upset as we are about this shows that they are willing to overturn everything that we've ever fought for, and we have to be ready to push back.
So the question then becomes, there are a number of employers across the country who have said, like Amazon, for instance, and I don't like giving Amazon credit for anything, but they've said, look, women in the workforce, if you're in a state that does not allow for abortion, they're going to pay to help you go to a place that does. Is this something that is a model for the future to help get through a transition period? How do you see this?
Well, hopefully we'll have more corporations step up and do that. And obviously within the labor world, we have to be fighting to make sure that we're getting some kind of rights and stuff in contracts, because labor obviously sets the stage for what happens within other corporations and stuff. But, I live in Ohio. And Ohio is not known for being real progressive. So we're obviously hugely concerned about what the impact is going to be in Ohio. We see the crazy kind of laws we get passed in Ohio already, and we expect Ohio to be one of those states that tries to go really, really extreme on this issue. So hopefully places like Amazon will threaten to pull their business if Ohio goes that extreme.
Yeah, no, I was just talking to somebody about the Intel factory. That's, there's some question whether the funding is going to come through. And, is this one of those moments where, other states start going to Intel, hey, you might not want to go to Ohio, because Ohio is politically really off on the extreme. And, on the abortion issue, is Ohio really that crazy? I mean, some of the polling I saw, they didn't seem to be all that extreme, because, across the country, when you talk to actual people, they're in favor of it being safe and legal. Nobody wants their daughters, their mothers, nobody wants the people back into back rooms or forced into desperation.
I would say the people of Ohio are not that right-wing extreme. The policymakers in Ohio are that right-wing extreme. We're so completely gerrymandered that our Republicans don't listen to the people anymore. It doesn't matter what the people think. They pass these really extreme laws, and they've got that heartbeat bill out there. And yes, they will go as far as they can go on this issue, because we're so gerrymandered that they're more worried about primarying each other than they are about listening to the will of the majority of the people.
Crazy times. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Melissa Cropper. She's president of the Ohio Federations of Teachers there in Ohio, also secretary-treasurer of the Ohio AFL-CIO. Now, the reason that originally that we had scheduled to talk is Ohio, again, another one of these extreme pieces of legislation with a minimum of a whopping 2 hours of gun hands-on training. I guess teachers can now, I guess this is where we're going. The lunch lady's going to be able to pack heat. We're going to have, the science teacher along with the Bunsen burner going to be, strapping a 9. Is this where we're going?
As where it's possible to go. It was already law in Ohio that teachers could and school personnel could carry guns if a school chose to do that. But what they did was reduce the amount of training that was required from over 700 hours to just 24 hours. And like you said, only 2 of those are actually with using a gun. So it makes it much, much easier for school personnel to carry it, but much, much more dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, the New York Times just had a piece out yesterday that I found fascinating when they were talking about the number of shootings. There have been like 430, 440 shootings across the country. And they broke it down by, how many times the police showed up and how many times, things ended before the police got there. And this good guy with a gun scenario, very rare that this actually happens. It's this fantasy, this Hollywood Rambo mentality that we've been trained to believe is possible, that, this person's going to, whip out their big gun and save the day. It's so rare that it happens. And in cases where the good guy had a gun, there were actually almost as number of cases where the policeman shot the good guy with a gun. So is this one of those scenarios where we're not just fantasizing that something's possible, but actually putting teachers in even more danger than they would be otherwise?
Absolutely. This is absolutely creating a false sense of security. It's putting us in more danger. We can take the case in Buffalo. It wasn't a school shooting, but the mass shooting that just happened in Buffalo, you had a trained police officer who shot the guy with an AR-15. The guy was wearing tactical gear, turned around and shoots the police officer and killed him. That's what we're going to see happen. A good guy with a gun or a good woman with a gun, whatever, cannot stop a bad guy with an AR-15. It's proven. It can't happen. So in a state like Ohio, where the governor promised to do something about guns, he's done nothing to make our state safer. On the same day this law passes, permitless carry went into effect. So now, again, we're going to have anybody can carry a gun, anybody can carry an AR-15, go into a school, and the only safety measure we have in this state is a teacher might be carrying a gun.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this. And look, here's where this weird thing comes into place. I look at the policies that they keep throwing out here, and this is probably one of the worst options I think possible, because I'm waiting for the tragedy that we know is going to possibly happen, of just having guns in a classroom, in that environment. Accidents are going to happen. Right. I was at a restaurant a couple of years ago, and some guy got up from the table, dropped his gun in the middle of the restaurant. Fortunately, it didn't go off and cap somebody in the next booth. But, that could possibly happen. A teacher gets up, spills the coffee, up the gun goes over, little Susie gets capped in the front row. And then there's going to be this huge outcry about, well, why didn't we do something there? This is setting up for disaster.
It's absolutely setting up for disaster. Like I said, the person could not take proper care of the gun, leave it laying somewhere where it could be used the way it's not supposed to be used. An assailant could decide to tackle a teacher and take the gun off of that teacher and use it. You could have a situation where a fight breaks out at a school and someone decides that it's dangerous and they need to use a gun in that situation. There's just so many things that could go wrong that outweigh any safety benefits that you might potentially get from this. It is a disaster waiting to happen. But I think it's also worth pointing out, Texas has had a similar type law for 10 years. And in 10 years' time, there's only about 300 teachers who actually decided to carry guns. Teachers don't want to carry guns in schools. Teachers don't want to be the safety personnel. And even those who might be willing to carry that gun to be safety personnel still expect that our government will keep them from having to use that gun. Okay? We should be doing something to keep someone from coming into that school with a gun to start with.
Yeah, this is where, before you start arming the lunch lady, maybe Ted Cruz's idea of one door is a better start. And I'm not saying Ted Cruz has the right idea. Everyone hates Ted Cruz and his stupid ideas. But, it sounds like the one door would be better than because, look, I had a very angry lunch lady growing up. I don't want her having a gun. Honestly, I want her nowhere. She was not all there every day, and I fear she was going to use it on the people in that line.
And that is a concern with only 24 hours of training, because again, when we were lobbying on this bill, obviously we didn't want anyone to have a gun, but we were saying there should be some kind of psychological evaluation that happens. There should be training and de-escalation strategies. That you can't fit in all the possible types of training that you need in 24 hours of training. That's why you needed 700 plus hours of training.
Right. But here's the thing. Here's the part. We're watching in what's going on in Uvalde. And we're watching how desperately they're trying to cover up their poor response. Whatever that reason is. I said from the beginning, I feared the police probably shot one of the kids or did something that they really don't want people to see. I'm hoping it's just that they were cowardice and they were incompetent. I'm hoping that's what it is, and it's not the extreme part. But these are people who took the active shooter trainings. These are people who are the well-skilled professionals. These are people, this is their livelihood.
Right.
I don't want people who it's just an afterthought. Hey, maybe I should. No, I want people. This is their livelihood, not teachers doing this.
Right. And isn't it interesting that even the people who have been trained, and not only there, but in Florida and other places, even the people who have been trained to deal with this are scared when the situation happens, don't want to go after the person with the AR-15. And again, now we're expecting teachers to be that line of defense.
Yeah, no, see, here's the thing. If you haven't been shot at, you don't know how you're going to react. Now, I have been in situations where people are shooting. I have seen people shot and killed. I have been in those situations. I know how I react. Don't give me a gun, because I'm going to shoot the first thing that moves. And that's a bad position to be in. I am going to preserve myself. And that, again, not somewhere where I think you want nurturing kind of professional teachers to be put in that situation. And I've had a couple of teachers tell me, look, how do I, given the kid down in Florida, that kid was in your class at one point. How do you pull a gun and shoot that kid dead?
Right.
Knowing that that was one of your students. Even though he's doing horrible something, he's killing other. How do you do that and live with? Again,
it is not the mentality of most teachers, like
Exactly.
you said. They tend to be nurturing people, and then have to turn around and pull a gun and shoot somebody is not the typical response you would expect for a teacher.
So where's the way forward in this? I mean, obviously, this is something that as a representative of teachers, you're going to want to bargain to get, the best conditions you can get out of this. You're clearly going to want to mandate that the school districts go for more training as opposed to less. I'm sure you're going to want people to be able to be compensated for their training and for the risk that they're taking on some level. Does any of this play into this? I'm curious how you guys are handling it.
Absolutely. We will use the collective bargaining process to make it the best scenario possible. And the best case scenario is to not allow it to happen to start with. Schools don't have to allow this to happen. And we already have districts like Cleveland and Cincinnati making the decision to not take this option. But the other piece is we really need community members to step up and tell their school boards, we don't want this in our schools. And again, elections matter. If you have school board members who aren't listening to you on this issue, then vote them out of office. The public needs to stand up and say, this is not what we want in our school district. This is not the path forward. We have to find other solutions.
No, it's absolutely that. But ultimately, I can't imagine that you're going to want this. As teachers and the disciplinary process. Is this part of going to be part of a disciplinary process for teachers, in handling it? There's so many unanswered questions, so many unintended consequences, so many things that I don't think they really debated. I think this was just ideology over good policy. I think they've created more problems than they're solving. And again, first rule, never pursue a policy that creates more problems than what you're solving. I think that's what you've done in Ohio.
Yes. And I think they just want to pretend like they've done something to make us safer because they don't want to really do anything serious to keep our children safe.
Yeah, because they don't want to deal with the real issue, which the real issue is the gun. But Melissa, I appreciate you taking time for us. Are you going to be in Boston for AFT's convention in a couple of weeks?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a great convention, so I'm excited to be there. Yes.
We will be broadcasting from the convention there in Boston. I look forward to seeing you.
Great. Thank you. It's been great talking with you.
Good stuff, Melissa. I appreciate your time. Melissa Cropper, president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers, also secretary-treasurer of the Ohio AFL-CIO. I'm curious your thoughts. Guns in the classroom, you okay with the lunch lady packing heat? Along with a little chicken pot pie, got the 9 on the side. Email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1880. Chicago labor leader Agnes Nestor was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Her father had been a machinist and a member of the Knights of Labor. Like many other families of the era, the Nestor family moved to Chicago during the Depression that swept the country in the mid-1890s. Agnes went to work at a glove-making factory. At the factory, the women were charged for the power it took to run the sewing machines. They also had to pay for the needles they used. Agnes helped to lead a successful strike against these practices. The strike was supported by the men's union at the plant. Agnes recalled the aims of the strike, saying, "No more machine rent, no paying for needles, free machine oil, union shop, raises for the cutters who were paid the lowest wages." Agnes went on to describe the day-to-day organization of the strike, saying, "We joined the picket line again and held meetings every day and evening in the hall the cutters had rented. How important we felt. Speakers sent to our evening meetings were furnished by the Chicago Federation of Labor Organization Committee. After the strike had lasted more than a week, management sent letters to the employees offering to meet almost all of their demands. However, they refused to recognize the union. The women turned down the proposal, and after 10 days, the women won their demands, including the right for union representation. In 1902, Agnes led the women glove makers on a campaign to form their own union. She also served as the president of the Chicago Women Trade Union League for more than 40 years. Agnes Nestor spent her life fighting for women's right to vote, the 8-hour day, and child labor protections. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Look, I look at what Melissa was saying and how badly gerrymandered Ohio is. And this is where, this moment has to happen. We've got to put down our politics for a while and start thinking about organizing in our communities in different ways. And, watching the social media today has been one of those moments where you go, everyone's bought their hats. Everyone's in their camps. Everyone's, we won, you lost. This kind of zero-sum game of hooray for me and the heck with you, without really thinking about the consequences of what our society is going to look like very shortly and the ramifications of these actions. Now, Clarence Thomas has called for, in his writings, he's called for all the other things that we've been talking about. The end of going after contraception, going after Griswold, going after same-sex marriage in Obergefell, going after interracial marriage in Loving. He literally said all this stuff is on the table. And it's one of these moments where he's like, hey, hear what I'm saying, crazy people. We're receptive. You now have a receptive Supreme Court, someone who's listening and willing to go in a different way. And look, Brown versus Board of Education could be on the table again. We really could. I've been saying for years, the right wants to undo the 20th century. They weren't happy with the New Deal, any part of it, and they want the 19th century back. They want the Gilded Age back. The robber barons want their wealth back. They want their power back. And look, they've already got their wealth. The pandemic really helped them out, again, even more. And now they want their power. They want their control. And what this decision is, what this Roe decision is doing, it's going to give them their power back. And it, as I said a minute ago, it's really about the desperation of the poor and the working class. Because wealthier women are going to get what they need. They always have. The wealthy always get what they need. People of means always get what they need, even if they have to leave the country to do it. And we're in one of these moments. And I think it's important to, don't gloat. If you're on the right, don't gloat. Because there are consequences that come along with this. If you're going to mandate that a bunch of people have children that they can't afford, don't want, whatever reason that is, you now as a society are going to take care of them. And if you don't take care of them, there then is the repercussion of not. And that means, higher crime rates. That means, higher poverty rates. That means all kinds of things. Again, the unintended consequences of your actions are going to mean problems down the road. And again, one of the first things that I believe in is when you're pursuing policy, when you're pursuing something, make sure the changes you make solve the problem and don't create all new ones. We're creating all new problems. Now, legislatively, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. And this is where now it reverts back to the states, where I'm at in Pennsylvania. Enormously important election this November in the governor's race. For me, it was an important election because if the Republican were to win in my state, immediately this would be a no rights at work state. Immediately they would pass and pursue the most destructive agenda for working people. And now you know that along with the most destructive agenda for working people and pursuing no rights at work, this would also be part of that, ensuring that Pennsylvania is not a safe haven state, not a free and safe abortion state, where my daughters are now in jeopardy. And, this again is one of those moments where we're reliving some history. And is it going to be a moment, as I said earlier, where we have to relive the tragedies of the past, where we have to relive the horror stories that I remember my mother and her friends talking about? A friend going to Kentucky to get a backroom abortion that was botched and that ended up costing her life because she couldn't tell anyone. And it got worse and worse and worse because she couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't tell her parents, couldn't tell the doctors, couldn't tell anyone. This is the world we're moving towards. And in today's world, it's going to be even worse because of all of the surveillance state technology that we have. And the next line of this. The next line of this is going to be, the next control of this is going to be that thing you carry around in your pocket, that tattletale that's with you everywhere you go, that you voluntarily carry. They're going to be tracking. And states are now going to become, places where vigilantes can make money off of. I mean, the fact that Texas was moving the bounty hunter law, that's going to be the future. And if you think I'm kidding, you need to pay attention more. Because the sad reality is they're telling us what they're going to do. They have been honest. As the dog was running to catch the car, they've been pulling along the billboard saying, this is who we are, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it. Now, it's up to us to organize. It's up to us to come around to the idea that, I like the Bill Clinton line, safe, rare, and legal. The legal part important. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Is this going to be a November issue? I said earlier, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. I'm going to get beat up for this, but I think we're going to have to suffer the consequences. I think they're going to have to be the horror stories before we finally wake up and actually do something. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.